Automated Podcast.
Welcome to Automated. I'm your host, Mark Verbenkov, and in this weekly podcast, we will be exploring the impact of emerging technology on jobs, society, as well as us, with business and technology leaders, researchers, and independent professionals across the world. So today's episode focuses on manufacturing, and specifically how neural networks and artificial intelligence give small and local manufacturers the ability to be better connected to opportunities around them, reduce both the business development and administration friction experienced by new entrants into the space, as well as what the future of manufacturing may look like. So to talk about these issues, Jenn Ryan and Adam Bowe of Xometry come onto the podcast. So Jenn is a senior vice president and head of seller marketplace at Xometry. Though she has expertise in design, implementation, and leadership of global delivery systems, Jenn also has an on-the-ground background in manufacturing, which I really think gives her a valuable perspective to the discussion points that come up today. Adam, on the other hand, is the head of community and marketplace engagement at Xometry. Adam and his team provide the industry's best educational content and events, as well as amplify the voice of the thought leaders in the community that Xometry supports. So Adam comes from a background of sales, marketing, and product management, but is also a podcast host where, among other things, he's able to dive deep into the challenges and successes of manufacturers within the Xometry ecosystem. So if you've ever been interested in manufacturing and automation in general, I think that today's episode really gives some solid insights into how this industry has been and will continue to transform. Hi there, Jenn and Adam. Great to have you both onto the Automated Podcast. It's great to have you here. One of the things that I just mentioned off air is the thing that I like to start off with all my guests is kind of a little bit as to why you're into the work that you do. So we'll be talking about Xometry today, manufacturing, both supply and client side from these things. Why did you guys get into the work that you're doing today? Maybe Jenn, we can start off with you.
Sure. So in 1990, I was in a pink collar job. I was a bank teller and I was making $5 an hour. And there was a night shift manufacturing job and it paid $8.25. And that is a game changer. And that was my entree into learning that there are great jobs in the trades. I started in print, and that and they are not those jobs are not traditionally jobs that women really think about. Mm-hmm. So and then that goes to my passions. So what it did for my family, what being in manufacturing did for my family. And now I'm really somebody who thinks, I hope I come off as somebody, because I do think a lot about how do we become more inclusive, right? Why are people of color underrepresented in manufacturing? Why are women underrepresented in manufacturing? So that's something that I think a lot about. Another thing I think a lot about is 90s hip hop. And I've seen the Beastie Boys 22 times. I saw them when they opened for Madonna in the 80s. So, and another thing I think about is reading. I'm an avid reader who doesn't get enough time to read. Right now, in the Xometry book club, Adam and I are reading the Poisonwood Bible,
which I had a dream about last night. Off topic, but we'll have to get into some random character in my dream introduced himself as Poisonwood, and I was like that, So, anyways,
so I like that because that's the start of a great Tribe Called Quest song. Someone last night, so.
Perfect. Well, maybe that's a good segue for Adam. You can talk to us a little bit about why you're interested in this.
So my Poisonwood Bible dream. No, I'm just kidding. So I let's see. I got into manufacturing. I've been in manufacturing my entire career, actually. So I started working at a company called Big Ass Fans, which is focused around the comfort of manufacturers, the workers in the manufacturing space, also agriculture and distribution, et cetera, right? Literally, they do large scale industrial fans. So got into that work because of a cool name and an awesome work environment, right? But then I found a true passion for for American manufacturing and intro into manufacturing across the world. So joined Xometry with a focus in the manufacturing community, which is this incredibly vibrant space of folks that are doing similar work, right? Like a lot of times you view small businesses as competitors in a lot of industries, but in the manufacturing space, there's this amazingly vibrant network of small business owners and operators and machinists that lean on each other for support during the hard times, education, et cetera, right? So there's just this a fantastic kind of underworld of the manufacturing community that I found super interesting. And so my whole passion is about empowering that and driving that forward and enabling connection as we move to a more digital environment in what has historically been kind of a local situation. It's moving more digitally. As Jenn noted, kind of personal interest. I'm also a big reader. I've got all the Song of Ice and Fire, which is the Game of Thrones books, first edition, first print, signed. I've met George twice, and I did not handle myself well. He's kind of like my Madonna or Cher, right? Like I definitely geek out whenever I see him. And also a big horror movie buff. So love my old school horror movies. So
awesome. Well, thanks for that. That's interesting. Yeah. I think something that was kind of interesting in both of the things that you guys said was kind of maybe connected to a little bit more of the challenges that the manufacturing industry is going through, right? So, I'm Canadian. I'm now situated out here in Barcelona, but definitely when I think of manufacturing in America, I think more like World War II or the post-World War era, and maybe less so in the last 20 to 30 years as globalization has increased and a lot of these kind of jobs and the whole production has been outsourced to places overseas. Maybe you guys could touch on one or both a little bit of the kind of overall challenges that you see within the manufacturing industry, because I think that's a good place to kind of situate the discussion that we're going to go into.
Sure. I think it's also, I appreciate that you tied it to kind of post-World War II industrialization and globalization. We know that there are more than 13,000 small manufacturers just in our sector, right? Who work in creating parts. So while there has been an offshoring of manufacturing, there's also a vibrant, as Adam said, manufacturing community. I think there's a couple things that are continuing challenges. One of them is that as the US fell in love with a certain path, everyone should go to college and then do this. We didn't, we lost. So I think that one of the things we see is that we've lost, and we're getting it back, but that love of these manufacturing jobs that really took people into the middle class. I think in the US now we see people, again, seeing those jobs as, we look at college debt, we look at the college system in the US, those jobs are fantastic jobs, right? I'm evidence of what those jobs can do. So when you talked about the challenges, first is that we have a manufacturing community, but those jobs have not necessarily been understood the way I think they should be, right? As great jobs for strong middle class jobs. It's coming back, right? Yep. Secondly, I think, and I'm really interested, your podcast is fascinating to me. And one of them is and I don't like to think of it as the limits, what's the right application of automation? Yeah. There's amazing things that automation can do. They have not, and if you look at just CNC in general, right? Like what an amazing application of technology. That hasn't changed the fact that you still need skilled machinists. Yeah. I think we need more information there. The third one that is fascinating to me is the pressure of aggregation and disaggregation. So disaggregation is often thought of as, we want to work against disaggregation, but disaggregation has the most opportunity for small business. And aggregation really compels centralization. Yeah. So I hope I don't sound too wonky, but what I'm really talking about when you talk about challenges and we think of it, look at what happened to our supply chain with PPE and other things we needed to fight the pandemic, it was small manufacturers who really, in many ways, pulled us out of it. So my narrative is respect for the jobs, I think, is a challenge. I do see a resurgence. But then the second one would be application, people understanding, and I love debating about it. What is the real application of automation? And then the third one would be, I like that you talked about globalization. How do you use it as a tool, but also aggregation and disaggregation of demand, of manufacturing processes. They create challenges and opportunities.
Right. Adam, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that what you touched on with the jobs is really interesting, especially as you start to look at there's been huge technological leaps in manufacturing recently, and so even within the jobs, right, you have this older generation of machinists that have been in the space for a long time that were having to do manual CNC and manual lathe work, right? Whereas now you've got computer programming that can set and work your machine for you. And so a lot of the kind of like black magic, as it's called internally, has been taken out of the work, right? And but what Jenn said is also true. You still have to have skilled machinists to operate, right? So you have this really interesting dichotomy of split between the older generation, the younger generation, that also still lean on each other, also still coach, but then you're having trouble recruiting some of the and filling some of the new jobs, that there's a lot of opportunity for those work. So I just wanted to expand on that point because it's a very key one.
Yeah, I also think so. Coming also a little bit from a kind of more European context, that's also one of the things that we see quite often. And I think it touches a little bit on kind of the cultural aspect that you were mentioning, Jenn, how, a lot of these jobs might not be seen anymore as interesting or even as worth going into. So we're actually seeing kind of more job openings, but not too many people to actually fill those jobs, where maybe automation might be one of those key tools to deal with that. I do want to jump into the reason that you're on the call as well today to talk about Xometry. So I think that this is a unique word, a unique name for a business. Maybe we can have a little bit of a description as to what this company is and what exactly it is that you guys do, because I think it's quite interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. So Xometry is the world's largest on-demand manufacturing platform. So what we do is we connect someone that wants to make something with someone that will make that thing for them, right? We do that through our instant quoting engine, and it puts data science to work for our customers, right? So it's a proprietary platform that enables engineers, product designers to instantly access the capacity of a worldwide network. So it's 4,000 plus manufacturers across the world. Now, it's the latest neural net-based machine learning techniques. And so what you can kind of think about with that, and those are like buzzwords for me, but when I actually like think about the definition, right? It's a neural network help us like cluster and classify. So we get a ton of quotes submitted through our instant quoting algorithm. And what it does is it uses the information from the partner network on when jobs were taken, for what price, at what lead time, all of the dimensional data of the product that was used to help price that for the customer at, the most market value price for the customer, and also pay the manufacturer a good rate for that work. And then, the manufacturer across the world supplies our customers, anyone from BMW, GE, NASA, Dell, Bosch to, Mark, if you wanted to make something, right? If you had an idea on something. So largest companies in the world to one-man idea shops. I want to pause there and make sure you don't have any questions on anything I said before I keep rambling.
No, the only point that I had on that, and this is something that I came across when I was actually reading up on the business on the website, was that, it's interesting how it also is still relevant for these smaller manufacturers and even for the smaller clients. I think that's, I think as the conversation will evolve, I think that's actually one of the key points that is very interesting for us and for anybody listening as well.
Yeah, I mean, the majority of our partner network is small manufacturers and small business owners, right? And then on the flip side of that, the customers, we have college students that are looking to launch their idea and have a prototype. And we also have large scale production runs. Jen noted on the PPE for the COVID response, right? So it's anywhere in between those. Like I said, from the largest companies in the world to a college student, and a majority of it is from small manufacturers that wouldn't have the opportunity to connect with a NASA or do work for them without a platform like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's actually, it's interesting you say that, Adam, because both Adam and I work in the seller marketplace, which is the part of Xometry that is completely focused on meeting the needs of these micro shops and small businesses. And I'm in the part of my career where the meaning in my work really matters, right? And I'm convinced, I've seen it, I've been at Xometry almost 2 years, I'm convinced that we are forever sealing a compact with small manufacturers to bring them work they couldn't otherwise do, to help them disaggregate these huge projects and to lift them up. And so so the things that, we were obsessed, we talk about, we're obsessed with small business. And when we think about the things that are that a talented craftsperson shouldn't have to be obsessed with, cash flow and running your shop, the idea that we get to spend our time thinking about how to solve those for our small manufacturers, there's a calling in that. And that's one of the things I'm excited about Xometry. I think I really like how Adam hit it on the head, which is the barriers for a small shop. I'm thinking right now of a small shop in Southern New Jersey. The barriers for them to get to work with some of these huge multinationals are tremendous. Yet, because of our technology and because of our reach, we bring these tiny shops to these big opportunities as part of our business. Further, when the supply chain seized, right, as the pandemic spread, our disaggregated, distributed network became the only thing that could produce. And we were able to continue to have product flow. So I hope it's coming through. I consider our small shops to be, they are the manufacturing heroes of this country.
Yeah, well, that was actually one of the things that I wanted to bring up maybe a little bit later in the discussion, but how COVID specifically impacted Xometry, but also the smaller manufacturers, because we keep hearing about all of these, whether they're small mom and pop stores or just smaller businesses in general, just being eradicated by the restrictions, the lockdowns across the world, not just in America or Europe, but elsewhere. So it's interesting how a technology that Xometry offers can help or solve the solution or solve the problems that a lot of these smaller manufacturers in this case are actually going through.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that the small mom and pop stores that you touch on, like restaurants and boutique, clothing stores, et cetera, right? Like they were impacted significantly by places being shut down. Xometry was actually able to work with the small manufacturers in our network to allow them to stay open. And we had an internal program called the Partner Resiliency Program, and it was all centered around how do we show up for the folks in our network in this time of need, right? And so what we were able to do is obtain letters of the
essential business letters
for pretty much everyone in our network. So they were able to stay open during this time, and not only stay open, but we focused on fitting work with them that we knew that their shop could take. So some of it was there's this natural kind of self-healing nature of networks, right? Like they almost function as like body parts and within a human body, where if you hurt your shoulder, right, your arm, muscles and your back muscles kind of make up for it. But so there's this natural self-healing, but then there was a huge focus internally to show up during this time for the folks that are the engine of our business, right? So, through that Partner Resiliency Program, we actually saw a lot of partners have, either a fantastic year or one of the best years that they've had, and we're able to grow.
I'll just amplify that with, so specifically, as we saw the pandemic move, first of all, we have invested in expertise in business continuity. It's a practice and an art in itself.
Mhm, mhm.
But as we saw that pandemic move, unlike companies that have made single source, and source could be a country or a region, who've made single source decisions, we've invested. It is actually less expensive to have fewer people in your network. But we've invested in having a very broad network, and that meant as certain nodes fell, as as China went offline, Europe and the U.S. can step up, and then as Europe started to have really feel the effects. We know how big the U.S. and we know how varied it is, and we saw that, as Adam said, our technology, but also the can-do attitude of American manufacturing made stuff happen. And so
Mhm.
this to me gets around theories um, of centralization and decentralization. It gets to me on theories of the independent ability of nodes to operate, and we don't have to advertise it anymore. We proved it. We delivered 97% of our US based manufacturers were open throughout COVID, and we delivered on time, and our revenue growth shows it. We were, and it was the strength of our distributed manufacturing. We were the dependable source of
Mm.
manufacturing through COVID.
Yeah, that's great to hear. I kind of want to take a step back before we go too much further, and maybe we can talk about the technology itself. So, Adam, you were talking about these neural networks, and I guess the AI that's enabling these kind of matchmaking sessions to happen. Can you touch on that a little bit further, so that people can have maybe a bit of a clearer vision on what exactly is happening?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have over 8 million job offers that has run through our partner network, right? And so during each of those job offers, what happens is our algorithm learns as the pricing of based on basically the material that was used, right? The design for manufacturability. So the DFM feedback that users get. What that means is how likely is a part once it's manufactured actually to work, right? So if you have thin walls, et cetera, it might collapse. So all of these types of data points are used and clustered and classified to be able to design or to output the final price point that comes to both the customer and the partner, right? Which makes us both more efficient because we say, okay, we know partners are going to take it at this price point at this lead time, right? And we also know that we're going to win here for customers on the front end. So it's this really robust algorithm that it was built by. We always come back to our people, right? So we have people that it's our own data science team. They're made up of folks from physicists at the master's and PhD level, mathematicians, computer scientists, mechanical engineers, chemical engineers, everyone that could touch both the manufacturing side of things and to design this robust algorithm. So it's really a phenomenal tool that both serves the customer and the partner network to be able to deliver there. But as Jenn said, we're also the technology side doesn't stop at the instant quoting engine, because we're also automating the accounts receivable and the accounts payable for our folks through the seller marketplace. So we're launching financial tools, we're launching quoting and quality tools, right? So all of these things that the small manufacturers have to deal with as well. That's where we want to take our automation and our technology and apply it to those solutions, because we want the manufacturers to be able to focus on what they're phenomenal at, which is manufacturing, right? So there's technology within the instant quoting engine, but there's also technology in other places that we're using to automate some of the small business motions that our network members have to do every day.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It sounds like the friction for doing business for some of these smaller manufacturers sounds like it's being eroded, right? As these automation technologies, whether it's the marketplace itself or beyond that, seems to be a little bit developed over time. That's very
Sure.
interesting. Yeah.
I think if you guys, I'm interested if you guys agree. We talk a lot about burden to quote. And when we
Mhm.
think of manufacturing automation, um, I think all three of us have a love of robotics and the advanced manufacturing jobs that are made possible by manufacturing automation. Um, but when we think of things like burden to quote, I mean, we understand from our small manufacturers and the best part of my job, and I would imagine Adam would agree, was listening to small manufacturers.
Mm.
And we're building solutions for them. Deciding whether or not to go after an opportunity is one of the most important decisions a small manufacturer makes. That's sunk time and that's lost time for our owner operators. Many of our shops say that the way that they use Xometry's instant quote allows them to pursue more projects that are more in depth because they've got a steady stream of revenue that they don't have to quote, right? That they're able to come in. And it's really interesting. There is magic, and our algorithms and our technology team, I would take them to battle anywhere. I think what's also interesting is that the democratization of the approach, each of our shops uses Xometry a little differently. We have shops that are 100% Xometry. They make a great business running that. We have a lot of shops that use it very differently. And I don't mind bringing up again, this kind of approach promotes inclusion. Working with people is the best. We all love it. It's also a closed system. And in these kinds of systems, supplier discovery is unlocked, right? You didn't know. And sometimes it's regional. You didn't know that there was somebody who maybe wasn't in your social or business network. Similarly, and we've already touched on it, but it's an open network in which a small shop might think, I can never possibly work on this, but actually through technology, they can.
Yeah, that's very interesting. That was actually one of the things that also, I guess, was highlighted for me when I was looking into Xometry. It was that you might have these regional networks, but the actual business that maybe it's only 2 or 3 people in a manufacturing shop, but they don't have the marketing reach, they don't have the communication reach. They might never be discovered, even though the actual need is, I don't know, maybe only we say kilometers, but only a couple miles away. I thought that was very interesting when I came across that. Yeah.
And what's also interesting is that you can look at, they can put the instant quoting engine and the network to use for themselves as well. So like that 2 to 3 man shop may be able to knock out the machining portion of the work, right? But they don't have finishing capabilities, right? But they're excellent manufacturers. So they manufacture the part and then they actually use our network to get the finishing of that part taken care of for that job, right? So they're like, man, I could absolutely knock out the CNC portion. Can one of you guys handle the finishing, right? And so they're able to work together and to take on work that maybe they didn't think that they could because they don't have finishing capabilities in-house. So it allows them to expand their capabilities internally to take on more and interesting work.
That's really interesting. Have you specifically talked to maybe a couple of these smaller businesses where, like, I think the question I'm asking is, like, what are some of those either skill changes or capability changes that happen in-house? One of the major kind of mega trends on the podcast that keeps coming up is, when automation is applied, it enables those people on the ground to change their skills, whether it's upskilling or otherwise. I think that's a very interesting idea. I was just curious if you had any kind of case studies or user studies from that.
We have so many we could take. I'm sorry, I was going to say we could take over your podcast. And you saw me like gesticulating because that's the. I want Adam to respond, but Mark, you said something really important, which is, as somebody who grew up in manufacturing, of course I had fear. I remember when printing went from creating plates to a digital workflow, and and of course your first response is fear. And then all of a sudden the jobs, what really happened, it wasn't all of a sudden, is that the jobs that remained, it required flexibility, but they really advanced manufacturing jobs. So Adam, I know you have a couple of case studies. I have a few too, but get into it.
So first of all, I mean, this is our like day to day, right? Like as head of, and I'm sure in the bio, right, you'll include this, but my job's head of community and engagement from the manufacturing side. So living and breathing the community, I'm always talking to our small shops. And one of the things that I think is the most interesting is that they use the job board to basically be able to track the market, almost do like market research, right? So if I were to invest in this type of machine, which I would have to, learn new things and kind of expand my capabilities, then I know there's jobs out there, both on Xometry's job board, but also probably locally, regionally, et cetera, right? So they use the job board as kind of market research and will expand their capabilities internally to match the market and help to grow their shop. And we've seen a lot of success stories in taking that strategy. And then they lean on the manufacturing network. Like there's, they, in the manufacturing world, they talk about YouTube Academy, right? Like just watching YouTube videos after YouTube video of some guy or gal learning a machine or teaching how to use the fifth axis, et cetera, right? So I think our technology helps to mirror the market and help them to expand their capabilities. And then other technology like, YouTube and et cetera, allows folks to have instant access to educational material as well.
I love that answer. And I'll go ahead and Mark, I'll just pile on top of that one. I think about a small shop in Auburn, California. And one of the things that the digitization of this space has allowed is that an owner operator can start a business, right? You do not need 4 guys anymore to start a shop. The other thing is that you can really, we all know that the cogs in these businesses are tough, right? You're in manufacturing because you love it. I believe that it is a passion, and the cogs are tough. I think another thing, and I'd be interested, Mark, if you see the same in listening to your podcast, I hear this as a theme, is that it really relaxes some of the pressure on the cogs. You can run a nice small manufacturing shop that's really turning a nice profit, a good living for your family with 3 to 5 people. And before we had the automation in the space, it wasn't possible. The number of machines you needed, the capital investment, the time to train, right? This is still a job that needs to be trained. We see, I visited a technical college in East St. Louis last year, and you see that someone really can, instead of 15 years, you might be able to really be a machinist 2 and 4 or 5 years, right? I think all those things are brought on by automation, and they're the good side. So not sure if that's what you were looking for from us, but as you see, we think about it all the time. Oh, and I wanted to say that. So I was thinking of that small shop in Auburn that was doing well with an owner operator, and the careful planning, but also the pride that happens when you've got enough work that you can bring on one person, and the automation lets it scale, right? You can add people when you need to, rather than having to have that fixed crew that you might have needed 15 years ago.
Yeah, no, that's it's very interesting and very on key, very on point for some of the things that come up in the podcast. Because on the podcast, I bring on a number of different guests from different industries. But yet, I guess connected to that, there's kind of 2 things also that I see. There's obviously like large scale changes where it still requires massive amounts of people, overhead, etc. A good example of that is always like autonomous vehicles. It's required. Like thousands and thousands of people are required, but that's more like new and emerging technology. A kind of a fun example that I always use is a podcast, right? Say 10 years ago, it was 15 years ago, it was radio. You needed a whole radio station. You needed to be able to do this with building the kind of capital. Was very intense to start something like this. Whereas now, we're on Zoom. All we really need is a microphone and some interesting, freeware tools to kind of edit and do these sorts of things. So different industries, but I still think that the same trend is there. We're able to do more with less. And automation is one of the kind of key tools to enable that
and
to
reduce
happen.
barriers to entry. And I hate those buzzy words, but you said it much more elegantly than I was saying it, which was, you're right. It is easier to start.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so Adam, you had something else to add to what we were just talking about.
Yeah, it's not Xometry technology, but as the machines, you were talking about case studies, right? As the machines and the technology within the space becomes more advanced, there was, plug my own show, right? Amplify with Adam. We've got it on the Xometry side of things. Our first guest ever was Andrew. He runs a CNC shop down in Crestview, Florida. And his whole workforce is ex-military. And none of them have any training. They're right next to an Air Force base. None of them have any training in the manufacturing space as they're coming out and looking for their kind of second careers, right? But Andrew, what his whole goal is working himself out of a job, and so he sits with them and trains them. But it's training on the machines, and you're not having to have this. Kind of going back to our workforce topic earlier, you're not having to have this like 10, 15 year learning curve within the space, right? The technology is at a point where that if you really dedicate yourself for a year or two, right, like you are a thought leader in manufacturing and lathe machining, CNC, et cetera, right? So it's gotten to a point where the technology itself has empowered folks to enter into the space, and then for the folks that have been machinists their entire lives to work themselves out of a job and actually start their own their own business. And then we get into the technology that the Xometry uses to empower them. So kind of the topics that we've already covered there, but I thought that was a really interesting thing for Andrew, that he talked about all of his workforce, no experience in manufacturing, but he brings them on there.
Yeah, that's also one of the other kind of large trends that keeps coming up in the conversations that I have on this podcast, and it's specifically focused with training and learning. Over the past year and a half, 2 years, I've become a virtual reality enthusiast, and I've had a lot of guests talk about VR. And some of the guests have businesses where they actually the VR enables training. So that was also one of the things I wanted to touch on regarding COVID. Like if you have seen maybe some of the training has been changed during the course of COVID, maybe I'll end it there and then touch on kind of the future ramifications or future things that we can look into afterwards.
Adam has a really nuanced view of this, and he in fact works with Adam. I'm so excited about some of the initiatives you have with our partners. I'm going to proudly have a mom view on this, which is, and if you'll experience about me, if nothing else, I am true to, I have a theme and I'm true to brand. I think we'll have some catching up to do. I think of the people that I want to see in manufacturing are lots of people like us and lots of people we haven't seen in manufacturing. One of the concerns I have is that if you haven't grown up in the world of technology that maybe my kids are growing up with, and you're going to learn this middle class job, and the expectation is that you're going to learn it all remotely. So I'm going to have my mom voice, which is, I want to see lots of different people, and that's going to happen with hands-on training, with access to technical colleges, with a real apprentice, kind of system. So I'm gonna make the plug that I think technology is going to play a really important role. But as those of us who have a passion that we want to see lots of different people in manufacturing, a complete virtualization of training. We all know that what training can't do is teach you how to be in the shop. What shop etiquette is. It can't tell you what's the right way to access somebody else's tools. What's the right way to ask for help? And I worry. So you guys have heard me on my pedestal, which is I want to see lots of different people. And if we don't stay with some of the not mainstream, you guys got what I was saying. Adam, share some of your thoughts and what you're working on.
I mean, I'm an eternal optimist, right? So you'll hear a lot of the things that I talk about. Obviously, there were struggles with COVID, right? But it highlighted opportunities as well. And so I hear from a lot of folks in our network, and one of the things that we're working on, right, is what Jen's talking about. So it's a hand in hand virtualization of training with running short events within shops that are not tech schools, right? This is a small business that's diversifying their income by saying that for a week you can come and learn introduction into manufacturing, right? And you'll come into the shop and learn how to manufacture something, while at the same time recording that and putting it up on YouTube so that anyone that has access to a machine can learn those things. So you see, and just to plug some influencers, you got Titan of CNC, you got John Saunders. Very soon you'll have Todd White, right? So you got folks out there that are producing amazing content for anyone that wants to learn. But you've also got small businesses that are saying, I want to give back to the local community. And at the same time, I want to start to kind of make spread my brand around. So the two things they're doing is that they're hosting local events within their shop, and it's touching on the shop etiquette and kind of the more nuanced things there, along with the machining. But they're also recording and producing those. It's your podcast point, right? Like now, as long as you've got a ring light, an iPhone 12, right, that can produce like movie level quality recordings, and access to a computer where you can upload a file to YouTube, you can be an educational influencer within the manufacturing education space, right? So I think training, there's been this really amazing kind of underscoring of the opportunity there, is that a lot of folks utilize the digital education platforms that we have. But then they're also saying, hey, we need more educated workforce. The way we do that is by investing in our local community and showing them the amazing opportunities here. And the way we do that is inviting them to our shop and showing them that it's not, you touch on World War II, right? If you go into a shop nowadays, it looks more like an operating room in a medical facility than it does, a dirty, grimy spot where you're shoveling coal into a fire to heat up the machine, right? So it's, I think pulling back the curtain on that and showing that this is a high tech industry, really, really can help energize folks into getting interested in it. So that was a broad answer, but I hope it kind of touched on your point.
Yeah. And also thank you for the visual, because I think a lot of maybe listeners might still have that older image in their minds when we're talking about manufacturing, when it's certainly not the case anymore. Maybe a little bit connected to this, one of the things that I also like to kind of end podcasts on is kind of like the future vision, right? If we're talking about, for instance, digitalization of training, that would have been something maybe 5-10 years ago that people would have been talking about, like, this is the next thing that's coming up. Maybe we can touch on like what the next 10 years would look like, if it's anything different from what has already been said. We recently had the news of like Microsoft Mesh coming out, that's enabling augmented reality on a collaborative scale, right? Whereas HoloLens was more one-to-one. We're now having, multiple people enabled to have, kind of a hologram in front of them. And I think that there are some like large manufacturing applications for this. That's just one example, but do you guys have maybe a sense of what the next 10 years is going to look like for manufacturing, for both, local and maybe more international?
Well, I have three things that I started to think about when you said that. I think the first is you're going to see a revolution in quality as the 3D technologies become more accessible and the price reduces. You're going to see that that quality is going to be able to be measured at the source, at each time you turn a part, each time that you're and you're going to, I think when you look at your boreholes and things, you're going to see a revolution there. I think that the ability to predict quality is going to take a big leap forward from these technologies. I think secondly goes to, I've seen some really interesting VR applications around assemblies, part assemblies, and some of the things you're going to be able to test again back at the manufacturer. So I think you're going to see these tightened timeframes that are really exciting, right? I also think you're going to see the manufacturer play a really important role. If I've got these technologies and I'm telling you this, I've got a micro measured part, and I've got the VR application to see how it fits into an assembly. You can also see it. Well, I'm now going to be playing a big role in recommending changes. Hey, these parts don't fit together in our VR. What can we do? The third one is, I think we're going to see we're going to see large scale manufacturing that is agnostic to the number and location of participants. So I think that these things that have come out of COVID, that Xometry really was at the forefront of, I think we'll see more of that. I think you will see big manufacturers, big projects, but large and small manufacturers being able through technology to play that role together. Adam, what are you thinking about?
Yeah, so you touched on it a little bit, but and I by no means am promising this, right? Like I don't have any insider.
Yeah, of course.
No, I'm holding you to
it. But I do see, from a quality and inspection side of things, and also on the front end on design for manufacturing. I see Tony Stark and Iron Man. Like when he's building something and he's able to expand and pull apart, right? That obviously has huge implications for designing a part for DFM, but also for the quality side of things, et cetera, right? Now, the other thing that I look at that is maybe not directly on technology, but I look towards the spirits and the liquor industry, right? So you look at these kind of micro brands of bourbon, and you've got micro breweries, right? Everyone, it feels like, has a tequila label right now, right? And so you look at the micro breweries, the micro brands. I start to see an explosion in small manufacturers as we ring this bell on the opportunity to own your own business. We lower the barrier to entry, and so you start to look at a network that becomes incredibly robust across the world. And so you have less of these 200, 400, 500 person, massive manufacturing plants. And I think you see a huge explosion in the 5 to 20 range of small manufacturers, just like we saw. And I actually don't know this if that was the case in Barcelona, but just like there's a brewery, a local brewery on every corner of the street, it feels like now, right? Like you can go somewhere that only does chocolate peanut butter stouts, right? Like that's their niche, right? But then you go down the street and you got a great IPA spot. So I think you see an explosion in small manufacturers as the technology makes it easier to enter, and the benefits of the industry become more clear.
Very interesting. Well, I guess maybe in 5 to 10 years, I'll have to have both of you guys back on to see what has changed.
Are you kidding me? By the way, I think you're terrific. And I want to say that you've really enjoyed meeting me. And that it's really been one of your highlights of 2021. I'm positive.
It has been a very pleasurable interview. Absolutely. I'm really happy to have both of you guys on.
Yeah, you're terrific. And I hope people tell you that. It's nice to see people practicing their craft.
Great. Well, I guess I can't ask for anything else.
And now I have a new best friend, Natalia.
Perfect. Glad I was able to help with that. I guess maybe the final thing, I'll have the Xometry website up. OK Zoomer, Adam, is the podcast that you're connected to. Do you want to plug that in?
We've got two. Yep. So we've got Amplify with Adam, which is our more small manufacturing basis, where I interview folks within our partner network and thought leaders in the manufacturing industry. And then we've got OK Zoomer, which is more of our customer facing, right? So you're going to talk to a lot of product engineers, electrical engineers, et cetera, right? And then if you want to get in touch with Jenn Ryan, linkedin.com/in/Jenn Ryan Xometry for Jen. And then mine's the same one, linkedin.com/in/Adam Bowe, Bowe, Xometry as well. So
perfect. Great. Well, thank you very much for coming on. It was an absolute pleasure. And as I said, maybe in a couple of years, I'll have to have you guys back on. Thanks again.
Yeah, we'd look forward to it. Thank you.
Right on. Well, that's it for this week's episode. Thanks for listening. If you like what you hear and you want to support the podcast and the conversations here, the best way to do this is to go onto Apple Podcasts and leave a review, as it helps the algorithm to reach out to new listeners and brings the show to them. Also, feel free to check out the website, automatedpodcast.org, where you can find the show notes for each episode, written articles on the themes of the podcast, and a library of resources on the topic of emerging tech and automation. Also, if you want to reach out and leave any feedback or you have any questions about the podcast or any of the conversations, there are general contact links such as email, LinkedIn, Twitter, etc. for you there on the website. And finally, for those of you that want more than just an audio conversation, the video recordings are now going to be up on YouTube for the newer conversations, so feel free to check out the videos by searching for Automated Podcast on YouTube, where of course you can like and subscribe if you prefer to support the podcast that way.
The Automated Podcast.